Welcome to The Sweat, everybody. I'm Jesse Cofield, and we have a ton to get to today. We're going to take a look at today's MLB slate from a DFS and sportsbook perspective.
Hey guys,
Our NFL dudes are going to join me for an AFC North preview. Plus, we're going to play NHL Matchmaker. Where should the top remaining free agents land? I don't know. We'll talk about it with our NHL guys. But we start in the NBA because there's always drama to talk about during the offseason. Hello, DK contributor Jeff Pratt and RotoWire's Nick Whalen. They are here. Guys, we're just going to roll through this. Really straightforward questions. Nick, best free agent move so far?
I think there are a few that qualify here, and I'm going to start with just kind of an aggregate of what the LA Lakers did. I think the Lakers were smart to kind of reinvest in a roster that got better and better as last season went along. They brought back virtually every key piece from last year's team that made a run to the Western Conference Finals. And yes, they did not make the splashy type of move, like the Golden State Warriors bringing in Chris Paul or the Suns bringing in someone like Brad Beal. But those are the type of moves that have gotten the Lakers in trouble in the past when they go all in on a player who doesn't necessarily fit. So they now have a very deep and very well-rounded roster around LeBron James and around Anthony Davis. So I really like what the Lakers did. And best of all, they still have flexibility now to trade some of those pieces mid-season if and when a better star-level player becomes available. So I think they did about as well as they could. In terms of value, Eric Gordon ending up with the Suns at essentially a minimum deal is an incredible steal for Phoenix. Every time a team puts together a big three, you look around and you say, well, that's great, but you got to fill out the rest of the roster. Good luck. And inevitably, there's always deals like this. You kind of forget that there are veteran players who've made 9 figures in their NBA career and want to make a run at an NBA title. Eric Gordon is the perfect player to join this team. I think he comes off the bench. He provides scoring punch that they were not going to find on the minimum market anywhere else. So getting Eric Gordon at that money for Phoenix was one of the biggest steals of free agency.
Jeff, you love the Eric Gordon move. I could see it in your face.
I did love the Eric Gordon move, and I'll stick to some bigger moves here because I thought there were some smaller, fantastic signings like the Eric Gordon one, like the Heat getting Josh Richardson back on the vet minimum, Seth Curry going back to Dallas, but those aren't really what people want to hear about. They want to hear about the big stuff. With all due respect to Nick, I thought Eric Gordon was an incredible signing. The Lakers did do very well. I thought of all the larger signings, 2 teams bringing back key players really stood out. And the first is the Washington Wizards re-signing Kyle Kuzma to a 4-year, $102 million deal. This isn't huge per se compared to the other big free agents out there, and it is Washington, but this guy averaged 21-7 last year. It was the best season of his career. He's only 27 years old. This is a very, very tradable contract for the Wizards. It's a great asset for Washington to use moving forward. There was the notion that they were going to lose him for nothing. Now they get him back on what looks to be a steal of a contract. I like this move for them. And then the Pelicans re-signing Herb Jones to a 4-year, $54 million deal, kind of a mid-tier signing compared to other big guys out there. But this is one where I'm not sure why a bad team with a ton of cap space didn't get involved and throw a huge offer sheet at Jones, especially when it was announced that that option was going to be turned down with him hoping to sign a longer-term deal with them. So they had an option. These bad teams, San Antonio, Houston, and he could have thrown a big offer sheet at him, especially San Antonio, considering they haven't used their cap space just to force New Orleans to match. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen. The Pelicans got him locked up on a long-term deal. Jones is the type of guy where his production doesn't really show up on the stat sheet. He does a little bit of everything. He's very long, a fantastic defender, and a great fit for this team, now on a steal of a contract.
All right, Jeff, we talked about some really good moves. How about some really bad ones? What is the worst free agent move that you've seen so far?
Yeah, this one's pretty simple. After we got word of the Damian Lillard trade request, it immediately became the 5-year, $160 million deal for Jeremy Grant. If Dame was sticking around, that contract would have been somewhat understandable. It would have been necessary to make him happy. But now that he's moving on, it looks like an absolute disaster. And no real offense to Grant. He's a great high-level role player, but committing $32 million to a guy annually who's not even a number 3 on a championship level team, it's just an unmitigated disaster. So the Portland's not looking great right now. Yes, I understand that as the cap continues to climb, this contract will eventually be tradable if he gets more opportunities and plays well within his role. for the Trailblazers, but he doesn't fit their timeline now. They're looking to shift to a very young team. This is an older guy who was hoping to help out a contender. That being said, there might have been something going on behind the scenes here if Damian Lillard knew he was going to request out, but made sure Jeremy Grant, his buddy, got his money. So good for him there, but not good for the Trailblazers.
All right, Nick, what's the worst free agent move you've seen so far?
You know, in terms of player value versus the contract they received, I think there are two, and one of them is the one that Jeff just sounded off on. Jeremy Grant, 5 for $160. He's a productive player. He's still relatively young. Excuse me. The Blazers have no depth on the wing, so independent of the Lillard situation, I get wanting to keep that player around, but man, I mean, we talk about some of these contracts having some sticker shock now, and then maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, as the cap goes up, it doesn't look as bad. I don't think this one is going to be like that. I don't think we're going to consider this a value at any point over the life of the contract. I just don't really understand that one. But the other is Dillon Brooks, 4 for $80, right? I mean, that's like the free space in this discussion. God. And look, I think it's now starting to come full circle where you're starting to see these arguments that like, hey, maybe Dillon Brooks has become underrated. Sure, maybe. I think he never deserved to be playing in China this season, but he also did not deserve $20 million a year after he tanked his own value. Like, who are you bidding against for $80 million of Dillon Brooks, on a Rockets team that just added, a high-level shooting guard, small forward in the draft and has other young players. So, Houston, to me, I was just kind of confused overall, bringing in Brooks, bringing in Fred VanVleet. They seem like a team that's maybe a little bit delusional as far as how far along they are in their developmental timeline. But we'll see how that works out. I didn't love the Lakers bringing back Rui Hachimura at 3 for $51. I know I said I like what the Lakers did overall. That was the one deal to me that felt a little bit overreaching. Rui Hachimura has not really been a good NBA player for most of his career. He had a very good playoff run, but I kind of wanted to see more before I'm handing him that kind of money. And then the other one, Joe Ingles, 2 for $22 to the Orlando Magic. I know nobody cares about Ingles, nobody cares about the Magic, but I watched him on the Milwaukee Bucks last year quite a bit. I don't know. I thought he might not even be in the league. Like I thought that might just be it, and he would retire. I mean, he looked completely washed to me, and then to give him 2 years and $22 million for a team that already has a lot of depth and that's going to take minutes away from younger players, I didn't really understand that one.
All right, Nick, how about a move that you want to see happen here? What do you think?
I know we're going to talk about Damian Lillard in a little bit here, but I kind of want Dame to not get his way. That's that would be what I want to see happen at this point. There's reports this morning that his agent is calling teams and saying, hey, don't trade for him unless you're the Miami Heat. This has got completely out of hand, right? And it's not anything against Damian Lillard. I love Dame the player. I want him to succeed for sure. And I think Dame landing in Miami is actually a really fun scenario. So it's not like I'm rooting against that necessarily, but the player empowerment, the players who don't have no trade clauses, players who sign these exorbitant 5-year supermax deals, thinking that they can dictate exactly where they land whenever they want. I don't think it's good for the league whatsoever. I don't think it's good for competitive balance. I don't think it's good for fans. So I would like to see Portland kind of stand its ground here. And that doesn't mean, they exile Damian Lillard to Charlotte or anything like that. But I don't want to see them roll over. We've seen too many teams get put in this spot where a player says, I want to go to this specific destination. That's the only place I'm going to be happy. Nobody else even make any offers. And almost always it works out in the player's favor. The team has to accept 50 cents on the dollar for a star player, and they set themselves even further back. So what I would like to see happen over the next couple of weeks, even if Dame inevitably lands in Miami, I want Portland to dig its heels in and make sure it gets the best possible offer.
Yeah, Jeff, Lillard's agent, Aaron Goodwin, been calling teams and warning against trading for him, telling organizations outside of Miami that trading for Lillard is trading for an unhappy player.
It's so silly. And I completely agree with everything Nick has said. I just tweeted about this before the show and went back and forth with some people about it. What is Damian Lillard going to do? Are we supposed to buy this threat that a guy who's going to be 33 years old by the time next season rolls around and is under contract for 4 more years on a massive deal that's probably going to become untradeable, definitely will become untradeable at some point during that contract. The question is whether it's when that contract extension kicks in 2 years or next year if he can't make it through the entire season because he's had a bunch of injury issues. Are we supposed to believe that when you trade for this guy who's under contract for 4 more years and is aging with a shrinking window of elite play, that he's just going to sit out, or he's going to pull a James Harden and, make life hell for the other players and the members of that organization. What have we seen from Damian Lillard throughout his career? Firstly, to suggest that he would do that, and that is props to him. He has been the ultimate professional throughout his entire NBA career, at least up until this point, because this is getting ridiculous. I don't believe that's who he is. And we also know one thing is the guy clearly cares about his public perception just a little bit. We hear him saying, oh, if I get traded, I don't want to go to a super team, which, by the way, you're going to a team that's made the Eastern Conference Finals, 3 times in the last 4 years, and you've got 2 stars. I understand Miami's not a super team, but you would be building a little bit of a super team, at least a big 3 if you go there. But he doesn't want to go to a super team, a team where it's a lock where he could win. He still wants to find the grind. So this is a guy who cares about his public perception. You saw how much James Harden tanked his public perception when he went to Brooklyn, went through that entire fiasco of then wanting out, and then Philly, the entire fiasco right now that he's currently dealing with. Sixers fans hate him. I mean, that might just be Philly in general with their sports fans, but I don't buy this whatsoever from Damian Lillard that if you trade him to a team that's not the Miami Heat, that he's going to be unhappy or he might not even report. That just seems like an empty threat.
All right, let's talk Summer League, guys. Nick, storylines, what do you have your eye on?
I think number one, we've had the Sacramento Summer League going on the last couple of days. It's been really fun to watch Chet Holmgren back in action. And to me, he kind of looks like the same guy that we saw last year before the injury. He's got 7 blocks over his last 2 games. He, had a double-double last night, near a double-double in his previous game. So that's been the thing I'm keeping an eye on, in these initial smaller summer leagues. Obviously, we get Vegas starting up tomorrow. Goes without saying, everybody's going to have eyes on Victor Wembanyama. I think this is up there as far as all-time Summer League debuts, probably as much, if not more hype than Zion's debut a few years ago. Scoot Henderson, really all the top rookies from this last class. But as a basketball junkie, I almost have more fun watching the second-year guys, right? Like, it's become more popular for, guys who maybe were not huge standouts as rookies. Like Paolo Banchero's not going to play for Orlando, but we're going to see Jabari Smith, Jaden Ivey's playing for Detroit, Shaedon Sharpe is on the Portland Trailblazers roster. Even Jalen Williams, who was a fantastic rookie last year for OKC, he's been playing out in Sacramento, should play in Vegas as well. So seeing the development from those second-year guys, and you want players like that to dominate in this setting, right? Like, those players should be the best players on the floor. Oftentimes, they'll only play 2 or 3 games, then they'll be pulled away. But I want to see Jaden Ivey really taking charge for the Detroit Pistons. I want to see if Shaedon Sharpe can continue where he left off at the end of last season. Once the Blazers went in the tank, I mean, he was like a 25, 5, and 5 guy over the last 10 games of the season. So against Summer League competition, he should look even better. I'll have my eye on a lot of those bigger name second-year players.
All right, Jeff, what do you have your eye on?
Yeah, I like the second-year player stuff, and then obviously Wemby is in his own atmosphere right now. But personally, I'm most intrigued by the Scoot Henderson versus Brandon Miller debate. I've gotten into it on Twitter with our very own Julian Edlow a few times. He's not here to defend himself, but he believed Miller was the right pick for Charlotte. I thought it was a horrible decision. I went on the show multiple times and said so. And not only was it a horrible pick, but it was a horrible pick by a guy who has been consistently horrible at making draft picks in Michael Jordan. So I'm not sure why the new ownership in Charlotte let him make that decision. I just don't believe in drafting for fit at number 2 overall. And that's what Charlotte clearly did. I've been very open about my concerns for Miller's playmaking translating to the NBA specifically. He's obviously a very smooth player. He can shoot it, but can he put the ball on the floor and make the right play at a high level consistently? Because if he can't, then you drafted a glorified high-level 3-and-D guy instead of Scoot Henderson, who, for all we know, could be the next coming of Russell Westbrook. So my concerns seem to have been justified to an extent so far. I understand no one wants to take victory laps after 2 days of Summer League. That being said, I did go on Twitter and take a victory lap against Julian yesterday. But Miller just doesn't look very comfortable out there. He's struggling to create space, make consistent plays off the dribble. He has a ton of turnovers. He's getting into foul trouble really early. I think he's averaging 7.5 fouls per game through 2 games in the Summer League. He only has 6 in the NBA when it gets to the regular season, so he might want to clean that up a little bit. And every time he commits an obvious foul, he raises his hands like he has no idea what's going on, or that the refs just have something against him. So I think he's in his head. a little bit. He's obviously a fantastic player. I do expect him to turn it around, but for the moment, I'm keeping an eye on his continued struggles. And with Scoot Henderson set to make his debut for Portland, if he looks fantastic, then Hornets fans are really going to get angry early into Brandon Miller's tenure with the team.
All right, good stuff, guys. Appreciate it. Nick, your job here is done. Jeff, we need a quick Wimbledon update here, okay, for the second round of the tournament. So what matches do you have your eye on today from the men's side?
Yeah, so one of the most interesting matches that should kick off relatively shortly here is Andy Murray versus Stefano Tsitsipas. It's always fun watching Murray play in Wimbledon in front of the home crowd. He really gets up for these matches, and he's actually favored entering this one on DraftKings Sportsbook, which is very interesting considering the age, talent, the seeding gap between these two guys. That said, Murray is excellent on grass. It's statistically his best surface. Doesn't matter the age, he continuously shows up on this stage, and it just so happens to be the worst surface for Tsitsipas consistently. So when you take that into account, the fact that Murray breezed through a 3-set match in this first round, where Tsitsipas went to a tiebreak in the 5th set, so he's a little tired, along with the fact that Stefanos has a long storied history of melting down on big stages, and this should be a very entertaining one.
All right, how about on the women's side?
Yeah, in the early stages of these majors, I just like to keep an eye on how the three main contenders look to gauge their form moving forward. I'm talking about Iga Swiatek, Aryna Sabalenka, and Elena Rybakina. Rybakina is the only one playing today out of those three. She's the defending champ in London, but she did drop a set in her first match and doesn't have the easiest second round matchup against Cornet. So I'm very interested to see how she looks, if she can bounce back, put together a 2-set win and build some momentum here. And I would say, if you're looking to bet on this one, my strategy is always, when betting on a favorite, to take the under of their opponent's game totals. When we're talking about heavy favorites here, Cornet is set at 7.5 total games right now in DraftKings Sportsbook. That's not necessarily a number I would be looking to bet in this spot, just because I need to see Rybakina put something together, but it's something to keep an eye on moving forward if she does string together a big win today.
All right, good stuff. Thank you. That is all the time we have, Jeff. Coming up, we're going to cover the bases in Major League Baseball with Nick Fryer and Gary and Thorne. But first, on the latest episode of The Starting Five, 3-time Sixth Man of the Year Lou Williams stopped by the compound to talk about how one night with Jay-Z influenced his decision to skip college and go straight to the NBA.
A lot of people don't go from high school to the league.
Right.
You know, how was that feeling for you?
My situation was different. You know, I got drafted, but I got drafted in the second round. My thing was, my senior year in high school, I started experiencing things.
Different.
I was like, I had this one night. LeBron and Mav introduced me to Jay-Z. I kicked it with Jay for a night, and I went to school the next day. And I was looking around the class like, I'm nothing like none of y'all. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I started experiencing different shit. So I was just like, I'm not going to sit in another classroom after this.
I can't do it.
I literally can't do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's gonna be the path for me. And so I started preparing myself like I'm going to the NBA. I'm going straight to the NBA. And I was naive. I wasn't in shape for my pre-draft workouts. So I slid in the draft. I was supposed to go late first round, slid in the draft, and ended up getting drafted in the second round by the Sixers. And I think that was a blessing in disguise. It was one of the best things that happened to me. I spent my first 7 years in the NBA in Philly, and I spent my first 3 with my idol. It's really a blur, bro.
Wow.
Like looking back now, I had an 18-year NBA career, and it's over already. Sixers, shout out to Billy King. He was the GM at that time. He gave me a 3-year guaranteed deal.
Nice.
Yeah, he gave me a 3-year guaranteed deal as a 17-year-old kid to give me that stability I needed to grow and be a pro. Because they knew they didn't need me. I was AI backup, and he was playing 45 minutes a game.
Yeah.
The original NIL deal.
And when he wasn't on the floor, Kevin Ollie was on the floor.
Kevin Ollie.
You know, and when he wasn't on the floor, Willie Green was on the floor. So I didn't have an opportunity. It wasn't a shot for me to get on the floor. So it was no rush for them to even have
you.
any expectations for me. You know, so for them to give me 3 years to get my thing going.
Get it right.
And like on schedule, like that third year, I started becoming a pro. And that's when I started getting on the floor. I unplugged from basketball this year.
Wow.
just to clear my plate, just to clear my palate, and I unplug. I don't know who's who. I'll be honest with you. I don't know who's who in college basketball and international basketball.
Okay.
If it wasn't for ESPN, I wouldn't know who Victor is. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
another game changer. You look at KD, you look at Joker, you look at guys that they like unicorns, something that you haven't seen before. And now he comes, you know, so I tend not to give too much credit before
you get on that floor and show.
You know, but you know, good luck to him, man. He gonna have the opportunity of a lifetime to prove himself.
The Angels are in a bad way. Mike Trout is expected to miss 4 to 8 weeks after undergoing surgery on Wednesday for a left hamate fracture. Shohei Ohtani left his last start with a blister, but did DH last night. The Angels are plus 400 on the DK Sportsbook to make the playoffs right now, something they haven't accomplished since 2014. Let's punch up DK contributors Nick Fryer and Gary and Thorne. All right, first things first here. Nick, does Trout's injury make it more or less likely that Ohtani's traded?
I mean, I want to say more likely, but at the same time, I just don't know if you're the Angels how you go and do this to your fans. As it is, we all know that the Angels are not necessarily the number one priority in Los Angeles, but then you're going to go and take away the guy that gives reasons people to show up to the stadium, on top of having, you know, Trout hurt. Who knows when he's going to come back? Who knows what he's going to look like? Because if he comes back with that hand injury and he doesn't really respond all that well, then who do you have for people to come show up for? Anthony Rendon? That's about it. So, I mean, with Ohtani, I understand that you need to, I guess, not lose out on him signing somewhere else and then getting nothing in return. But at the same time, it's like, how do you let this guy go? And I say that knowing like that the Red Sox got rid of, you know, Mookie Betts years ago for nothing. But for the Angels, it just seems like it's such a much worse situation. At least everybody's going to show up for his starts every day or every 5 days.
Okay, I mean, Gary, what's your take on this situation?
I mean, it's easy to just say trade him because I do think it's an uphill battle for the Angels to make the playoffs. I think the AL in general is probably a lot stronger than most people predicted coming into the season. Like, I thought the Angels had a reasonable chance to make the playoffs this year, but I wasn't expecting the Rangers and the Orioles to be as good as they are or as developed as they are. And suddenly you're in a situation where you're not only 4 games back in the wild card, but you have to like hurdle the Blue Jays and the Yankees or the Blue Jays and the Astros, like good teams. And I just think if you're Artie Moreno and you're being smart about this, you trade Ohtani because he's made it clear. I mean, as clear as someone like Ohtani will make it. He's not like a guy who's going to come out and say, I hate the Angels, I don't want to be here. But it really does seem like with the way his agent's been setting up meetings with the Angels brass, like he's not going to end up back with the Los Angeles Angels. Like, I think you can pretty confidently say that if he hits free agency, he's gone for nothing. So the smart and correct move would be to trade him. Whether or not Moreno actually is going to do that and realize that that's the path you have to take, I think that's a different story.
All right, let's get into today's MLB slate, guys, because we can't think about this anymore. Favorite high-priced DFS play tonight, Gary, and who are you going to be paying up for?
I'm going to go with Christian Walker, who is $5,400. Walker, amazing last season, and then got off to a really slow start in 2023. But he's been great since the calendar flipped to June. If you go back to June 1st, he's actually hitting .316 with a .282 isolated power and a .159 WRC+. Christian Walker is basically a big right-handed first baseman who mashes home runs. And that is kind of the recipe for disaster for Carlos Correa right now. It's interesting, Correa, for most of his career, was a pretty ridiculous platoon splits guy towards left-handed bats. That's where he tended to struggle the most. But this season, it's been right-handed bats. He's giving up almost 3 home runs per 9 to opposing right-handed batters so far this season. So Walker, the best right-handed home run hitter on the Diamondbacks. I think he's a really good place to start your lineups.
All right. Well, it looked like from your facial expression, Nick, you were on board with that decision.
Yeah, 100%. I think using Walker against Carrasco is great. My only thing was that I have a first baseman who I like for value too, so I'd rather talk about someone else there. So I'm glad I pivoted because otherwise Gary and I would have been doubling up. Another guy you can go with, we brought up the Orioles earlier, Anthony Santander, 4.6K going up against Luis Severino. Across his last 63 plate appearances against right-handed pitching, Santander has a 333 average, 5 home runs, 3 doubles. I know he's gotten a little bit lucky in some of it all with a 318 BABIP, but at the same time, he's got a 40% hard contact rate and just a 32% ground ball rate against right-handed pitching during that span. So it seems like a lot of that has been earned. And then when you look at Luis Severino, too, obviously coming off a rough start, he's only got like a 19% K rate against right-handed pitching in his last 6 starts. So this is a spot where Santander should have a few batted ball events against Severino and might take him deep.
All right, Nick, well, we just talked about who we're paying up for. How about some value here? Is it a first baseman?
Yes, it is, Jesse. That was a good call on your part. Carlos Santana, 3.2K, going up against Julio Urias. Now, look, I know Urias, obviously, left-handed pitcher. Now, Santana is a switch hitter. But with Urias, I know he came off that rough start, and maybe people will be thinking, oh, he's going to bounce back. He's going up against the Pirates. But when you look at Santana in this matchup, 267 ISO against right-handed pitching over the last month of games and a 44% fly ball rate. When you look at what Urias has done against right-handed hitters have the same fly ball rate and ground ball rate against Urias this season on top of a 21.5% line drive rate. So guys get the ball airborne a lot against Urias. You look at what Santana has done against left-handed pitching in that same regard of late. It should be huge for him going against Urias tonight, who just got smacked around by the Royals, and I expect him to not necessarily do all that great again tonight.
Gary, and I know you've got some DFS value for us. Where is it?
On the pitcher's mound, I'm going to go with Kyle Bradish at $7,200. He's kind of middle of the pack on this slate, but I would always consider anything close to 7K for a pitcher some pretty good value. The thing about the Orioles that is shocking when you look at the success they've had this season is they don't really have like a bona fide ace. They don't have a true number one pitcher. They were kind of hoping Grayson Rodriguez would be that guy in his rookie season. That didn't work out, although he looks pretty good in AAA right now. But Bradish in his last 7 starts, a 2.88 ERA. That's backed up entirely by a 2.92 FIP. He's striking out over 26% of the opponents he has faced in that span of time, including a 10 strikeout game last month. He just seems to be blossoming into a very trustworthy option on the mound right now. And while the Yankees have been better with the bats the last 7-10 days or so, they still haven't been very good with the bats overall without Aaron Judge. Just an 87 WRC plus the last 30 days overall. So I think it's still pretty fair to pick on the Yankees without Aaron Judge, and I think Bradish is just in a really nice place right now.
All right, let's mosey on over to the DraftKings Sportsbook. Favorite bet tonight, Garion?
So this hit last night, and I'm just going to go right back to the well, which is the under in the Rangers-Red Sox game. Red Sox games just tend to be really, really inflated when it comes to the total. And it's understandable. The Red Sox, back in April and May and early June, were really hitting the over at a high rate. So I understand this, but 10 is a big number when Nathan Eovaldi's on the mound. I mean, he's been fantastic for the Rangers. His last 12 starts, he has a 1.81 ERA. So I think the Red Sox, who in the last 14 days have just a 69 WRC plus as a team, I think they're really going to struggle to score runs off of the Rangers tonight. And then, Cutter Crawford's not great. But a lot of his statistics are inflated from his first start of the season against the Pirates when he gave up 7 earned runs in 4 innings. He's really been fine since that start. He's just kind of working his way back. He's fully built up after transitioning out of the bullpen. His last 2 starts have been pretty good. I just, again, think this is a really big number when you consider that Texas has their ace on the mound and the Red Sox have not been swinging the bats all that well lately. And to that point, the under is hit in 6 of the last 7 games at Fenway.
All right, Nick, favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook for this evening. What is it?
Yeah, Garion brings up that the Rangers have their ace going on the mound. It's not just their ace. This is the Nathan Eovaldi revenge game going up against the Red Sox, too. And I tend to agree with Garion, too, when it comes to Cutter Crawford. He doesn't get his fair shake, but when you look at his last 6 outings, hitters have a 39% hard contact rate against them and a 39% fly ball rate. Not ideal when you're going up against a Rangers lineup that's one of the better teams against right-handed pitching. Since mid-June, they got a 182 ISO against righties. So I like the Rangers on the money line tonight. Another thing to look at too, Rangers are 6-2 when they are favored against a non-division team after a loss.
All right, guys, really quick, extra bases. The DK Sportsbook did release odds for the home run derby. So, Nick, who do you have? Pete Alonso is the favorite at plus 310.
I know the winner's going to be coming out of the 4-5 matchup from the first round. That's Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia. Both of these guys make a ton of hard contact. Randy Arozarena even does it on really hard pitches, and Garcia has a perfect swing for home run derby stuff too. So one's 850 Arozarena, and then Garcia's plus 650. I'm between the two right now. If I have to pick just one, I'm probably going to go with Adolis, but I might end up playing both these guys at those numbers.
Tyrion, what do you like?
I had the same name written down. I think Adolis Garcia is really nice value right now. Of these competitors, leads
Shohei Ohtani
ball event.
Exit with
and again, that seems like the easier side of the bracket. Like that bracket, you don't have to face Pete Alonso or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. until a possible final matchup. Like one of those two guys, Randy or Adolis Garcia, has to make it to the semifinals, and yet their odds are 2 of the 3 lowest on the board. So I think maybe you just sprinkle with both of them, and at least you've got a guy going to the second round.
All right, good stuff, guys. Appreciate it. That is all the time we have. Up next, we are diving into some football talk. Can anyone unseat the Bengals in the division this year? I don't know. We're going to preview the AFC North with Pierce and Jeff. But first, here's the gang from the Baseball is Dead podcast, diving deeper into Shohei Ohtani's blister drama.
The Shohei Ohtani exit with an injury that Bob Nightingale tweeted and made it seem like he was like if you weren't watching the game, you would think like his season's over. He's done. It was a fingernail.
Yes.
That detail very much important to the context of the story, I feel like.
Dude, I was calling the game. I was calling our game. and I see this pop around and I was like, well, hold on. What? No way. No way. Stop it. And then you're like, you're doing all that math, right? The Rendon, fucking Trouty, this. I'm like, no, stop it. Because the first thing that came to my mind was, are we cutting that paycheck in half at free agency? What's happening here? And it was all because of the context. Like there wasn't much given there to go on. So it felt very like end of days-ish. Like, no, stop it. Stop it. But glad it's just a blister. Glad it's just a blister.
Well, I mean, blisters can be a pain in the balls. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that blisters are no small thing. I thought is it a blister or is it a fingernail? Jay, you seem like you're smarter than everybody here.
My understanding is that it is a blister on the same finger that he had the cracked fingernail from the previous start. So I don't know enough to know whether that's related or not, but it seems to be the same finger and different injury.
I happen to know enough whether that's related or not. It's a good thing you have a pitcher on this podcast.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay. In Dallas.
There's a fella on the Oakland Athletics also dealing with a similar issue, not currently dealing with, but was dealing with a similar issue, where the blister and the cracked fingernail, they do, because you're trying to treat both at the same time. And I'm not saying that one leads to the other, but I think there's some theorizing that is leaning towards these both impacting each other because it's all pressure related, right? And if you can't feel the baseball, or you're making a minute adjustment, the ball flight is thrown completely off. So you can't spin the baseball the way you'd like to. You can't apply pressure to spin the baseball the way you like to. Your release point is compromised. Maybe you start to try to stay inside the ball a little so you don't really rip the seam down. And now your ball flattens out. You get fucking hammered. It's a bad scene all the way around. All the way around. I mean, I had part of my middle finger shaved off. Tip of it shaved off on the side because the blister in the fingernail situation was so bad.
Like what? Describe that. How is that like a self-surgery? Or did you go to a doctor for this?
No, the doctor did. I mean, let me rewind. It's not like I had part of my finger severed. That's not what happened. But my blister and my fingernail in the corner were so bad that instead of continuing to pop it and drain it, and instead of continuing to try to shave the blister down and then trim the nail basically out from the blister, it's like having a permanent hangnail is what it feels like.
Yeah.
So instead, they just shot me up with a Lenovo, kind of fillet that thing all the way down to the point where the nail was exposed. Now they can trim that nail up and get it out of there. And as it's grown back, it just never fully grew back, which was nice because I didn't have to deal with that anymore. But now there's if you look at my finger, there's just a slight, it's not fully round. It just kind of, and then rounds.
You can catch Jared every Tuesday right here on The Sweat, the Tuesday Takeover with Jared Carabas. It's live on DK social channels at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and then it airs on DK Network at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you tune into that. Next week, we're going to check in with him from the All-Star Game in Seattle, where he's going to have different fan bases pitch Shohei Ohtani on joining their team, and I'm sure that will definitely make the difference for him. Let's bring in our football panel now. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich for NFL division previews. AFC North is where we're going to be going today, fellas. So, one of the closer divisions actually on the DK Sportsbook. All the teams at plus money to win it this year. Bengals are the favorite at plus 150. Jeff, can anyone unseat them this year? What do you think? This is how it all went down in 2022.
I mean, it is one of the tighter divisions. You just look at the win totals, too. I mean, the Steelers obviously have the lowest, but it's only at 8.5 right now set on the DraftKings Sportsbook. And, I mean, look, the Ravens have certainly reloaded. I think if any team is going to do this and knock the Bengals off, it's going to be the Ravens. I'm not confident enough to say it's a two-horse race, but I really do think those two teams are the class of the division. But I'm not going to bet against the Bengals. I think taking the Bengals at plus money is just fine. Zach Taylor has proven himself to be like a top 5 coach over the last few seasons. He's beaten teams on the road when they were huge underdogs, and he dismantled the Buffalo Bills. They've moved to a higher pass rate on their offense, so they're taking advantage of Joe Burrow and these receivers. They're just doing everything they're supposed to be doing. So I think that the Bengals probably take this division again. I do think that the Ravens, assuming Lamar Jackson stays on the field, will definitely make this a race, though.
Pierce, are you in agreement? If anyone has a chance, it's the Ravens here?
Yeah, I mean, the division's tight, but I really don't think anyone's going to unseat the Bengals. And I just want to add on to what Jeff said. We all know about the offense. We know about the weapons that they have and have added, and their offensive line is even better and probably gelling more now after a year together. But the defense is very underrated. Lou Anarumo probably should be a head coach somewhere. He's back as the defensive coordinator again. He has a very solid system. The players on this team are underrated. We say that they're more system players, but I think they would be stars anywhere else. Yeah, they lost some safeties, but I think through the draft and free agency, they've added even better players. And then something that we don't often talk about, the third phase of the game, they have probably the best kicker in the league. So they check just about every box that you can ask for.
All right, guys. Well, a great feature on the DK Sportsbook for team win totals that we have, okay? You can set them however you like, and the odds will change accordingly. So let's quickly go through the teams in this division. You tell me how high you're willing to go on wins for each team. So let's start with the Steelers here, Pierce. Where are you going?
I'll go over 8.5. I'd like for the odds to be boosted a little bit more. It's just 135 at the moment, but I think that tells you everything you need to know about this division. Their quarterback play can't get any worse, and it should likely get better. They won 9 games last season with terrible quarterback play, so that should improve. Their defense will be healthy. A lot of websites have this defense projected as a top 5 D, so give me over 8.5.
Jeff, the Steelers.
I mean, death taxes, Mike Tomlin getting a winning record. It's really hard to bet the under on the Steelers. I would set them at 8.5. I don't think there's any point in trying to go for the hero call at 10.5. You leave it at 8.5. I would personally take the under here just because of the juice. It's plus 135. Really don't like betting against Mike Tomlin, but I mean, again, with these odds, I would lean towards the under. They have the worst quarterback in the division, and it's really, really tight.
All right, Jeff, the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns, I mean, again, like I'm not, I think there's a little bit more upside with the Browns. So if you were interested in the over, you could certainly move, the needle if you wanted. Right now they're set at 9.5. I'm not going to take the over on 11.5 or anything, but I think there's a little bit more upside with this team. I would lean under again. I just don't trust that Deshaun Watson is going to come in and be the player he was before. Give me 9.5 in the under for Cleveland.
Pierce, the Browns, where are you going?
I'll go the other direction, but it is very tight. Give me over 9.5. This is sort of the opposite situation, whereas I feel comfortable with the Steelers' defense, maybe not so much their offense. I feel much better about Watson, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Njoku, and then, oh, by the way, Nick Chubb. I think they can get over the 9.5 mark.
All right, Pierce, how about the Ravens? Where are you going here?
So I'll go a little aggressive here and under 7.5. You can get that at plus 400. We have seen bad things happen to the Ravens. And there's been a lot of question marks over the last couple seasons. If their offensive line doesn't play well, they don't play well. If their running backs get injured, they don't play well. Beckham might be too old. You might be asking a lot for Zay Flowers to come in and have a breakout season. And Lamar, he's been up and down. He's had his injury issues. So if I want to get aggressive anywhere, it's going to be right here.
Jeff, where are you going with the Ravens?
Admittedly, I think there's a wide range of outcomes for the Ravens. They bring in a new OC as well, but I do think it's going to be positive. And I would actually lean the other direction. If you're going to go Ravens, go 11.5 and go over plus 180. This team has an insanely good record when Lamar Jackson is healthy. And if he stays on the field, they were 8-4 even with Lamar Jackson last year. If he stays on the field, 12 wins is in sight. Go plus 180 for over 11.5 wins. That's probably where I'd dial it up to.
Finally, Jeff, the Bengals. What are you doing here?
The Bengals, again, you look at the 11.5 total, you say, it's tough, the division winner's schedule. Just take the over at 11.5. It's a very, very solid team. Again, they're using all their weapons. Pierce mentioned the draft. They've solidified the defense again. I just leave it at 11.5 and go over.
Pierce, what do you think?
Yeah, I could easily see them just running through this league and going way over this number. But I'll take the under and 11.5 just because they just ran so hot last year. I mean, everything broke their way. They were covering spreads every week. I think that maybe they'll be a little bit misfortunate this season.
Ooh, okay. All right, how about a player future that you like from this division, Pierce? What do you think?
How about Kenny Pickett? Over 3,300 yards. He had 2,400 yards last season. Didn't even play the full year, basically 12 games. If you run that out to a full season, he goes over this number, and that's in his rookie year. I think Pickett over 3,300 that's a pretty low number.
All right, what do you think, Jeff?
They give me Najee Harris to go under his rushing total. I targeted him last year. Now, again, like Harris, you're looking, he's got a lower total this season, but he's dealing with some severe competition with Jaylen Warren. And if you look down the stretch last season, the Steelers upped Warren's snap count to where he was taking over 30% of the snaps. So I like targeting Harris again for another under here. I really think that when all is said and done, his snap count could go down. He's also coming off 2 seasons of heavy carries as well.
All right, guys, a lot of DFS studs in this division, okay? Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Nick Chubb. But, Jeff, how about a DFS or fantasy sleeper that you want the people to know about?
I mean, I just mentioned him. I mean, this division it's got some interesting rookies, but I don't think you have a lot of players who are necessarily going to step in right away and take main roles. Zay Flowers is dealing with a lot of competition. Who knows what Elijah Moore is going to bring us this year. Jaylen Warren, though, of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's already got a role carved out. Like I said, last 7 games of the year, he had an over 30% snap count in 6 of those starts. He well outproduced Najee Harris, had almost 5 yards per carry. Warren's going to have a role right from the start, and you're looking for players like in DraftKings best ball leagues or just redraft leagues to start targeting like later round if you're doing some kind of zero RB approach. Jaylen Warren is it. I mean, he is in a great spot. He would take a main carry approach right away if Najee Harris ever got hurt. He's going to have a role in the receiving game because he's a far better receiver. I think Jaylen Warren is a player to really watch this year for fantasy.
All right, Pierce, who do you think we should be watching this year?
Irv Smith Jr. for the Bengals. You've got 3 wide receivers on this team. It's going to make it really hard to cover the tight end. Also, they've got a really good offensive line, which means he's going to block less and run more routes. Completely underutilized by Minnesota. He's only 24, former second-round pick. 47 targets last year, caught 36 of those. I think he's going to be a lot more active for Cincinnati.
All right, good stuff, guys. That is all the time we have. We will continue these division previews as the season approaches. Meanwhile, there's still some big names out there at NHL Free Agency. So our NHL guru, AJ Schultz, is going to join us and play matchmaker. Ooh.
Hit my bet. Whoa! I'm back, baby. It's Poppy time.
New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
So, the player you benched just went off. But with Best Ball on DraftKings, that ends here. Enter a contest and snake draft your team. Every week, you'll automatically rack up points from all your top scorers. No ads or drops, no trades, no I should have played him instead. Teams with the most points by season's end take home cash prizes. So head to the DraftKings Fantasy app and get in on our biggest Best Ball contest ever with this latest offer.
You know, betting without a game plan is a little like skating a giant ramp without helmet and pads. I wouldn't risk it. And I wouldn't bet without a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook provides you with tools to set a realistic budget and time limits, so you're ready to bet responsibly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino apps to learn more about how you can practice safe bets.
Welcome back to The Sweat. I'm Jesse Cofield here with AJ Scholes, who is going to talk some NHL free agency. So, AJ, we still got some top remaining free agents out there without a team for the upcoming season. So, we're going to go through and you're going to tell me where you think the best fit for them would be, okay? So, let's start with Patrice Bergeron, who won his sixth Selke as the league's best defensive forward. Looks like it's back to the Bruins or retirement. But could another team come in here and pry Bergeron away? What do you think?
There's no chance. I mean, literally no chance that Bergeron goes anywhere else. This is so straightforward. And really, I think this is a decision that's all in his camp. They've got a little bit of cap space left to sign him. He had a really good season last year, 58 points. So from Boston's standpoint, I think there's no reason to do anything other than bring him back. They only paid like $2.5 million last year to have him. I would expect another one-year deal again. So it's really up to him. Does he want to keep playing? And if he does, it'll absolutely be in Boston, no question.
All right, same thing could be said for David Krejci here. Is this as straightforward? He'll either be back in Boston or done?
It's maybe not quite as straightforward in the sense that, like, you're talking like maybe a 5 to 10% chance he would go somewhere else compared to Bergeron's 0. I think the only question would be if Krejci wanted to go play in the Czech Republic again, like he did a season ago. So that's really the only question mark. But if it's in the NHL, I think you'll see Krejci back with the Bruins again. Like I said, they've got enough cap space to sign both of these guys and get them under contract and then just roll with a pretty similar team that they had last year that, you know, had a really good regular season. So no reason not to bring these guys back. I'd be shocked if Krejci went anywhere else.
All right, how about Patrick Kane? This dude is a 3-time Cup winner. He had 12 points in 19 games after being traded to the Rangers at the deadline. So where's his best landing point?
Well, I think the biggest question around Kane is what is he looking for? Is he looking for a one-year deal to go to a contender willing to take a little bit less? Or does he want to cash in? I don't really think he needs to cash in when you consider he was making, you know, $10 million a year for the last, 13, 12 seasons in Chicago. So I wouldn't rule out a return to the Rangers if he's going to, you know, make a low-cost deal here. Something similar to what they did with Wheeler. But ultimately, I think New Jersey would probably be the best landing place for Kane. They could offer him more than a one-year deal. They've got an up-and-coming roster. They've put a ton of investment into the team already. He would immediately improve an already improved top six here. And don't rule out potentially Boston. If Bergeron or Krejci opted to retire, maybe Boston. But I think for Kane, the best fit, probably the New Jersey Devils.
All right, how about Jonathan Taves? All right, other former Blackhawks star. Looks like he will not be back in Chicago. Former captain had been battling the effects of COVID last season. Limited to only 31 points in 53 games. Where could we see Taves finding a new home?
There's just so many health concerns here. He had the entire season that he missed out, and now the long-term COVID issues here. I don't know that you're going to see a contender willing to necessarily take a risk on him. And I don't see a lot of money coming his way either because of that. I think one team that's kind of in between that could offer maybe more money than the rest of the market and is sort of a contender would be the Winnipeg Jets. It would be an opportunity for him to prove that he can stay healthy. They could offer him 1, maybe 2-year deal here. And then, they could use a middle six center. This team is in transition right now. They've got Connor Hellebuyck. They did just buy out Blake Wheeler, but they've still got Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. So it's kind of a weird transition team right now. I think Taves would be best suited to go somewhere like that that's on the edge of being a contender.
All right, well, the best defenseman is still available, Matt Dumba. So his production's dipped the last few seasons a little bit. He had that career high 50 points in 2017, 2018. He's only 28, though. So where could we see this dude ending up?
Well, with the cap situation right now in the NHL, I would expect Dumba is actually maybe only looking for like a 1-year deal. His production has dropped off the last few seasons. So if he could go somewhere, sign a 1-year deal, kind of prove he's still got some offensive upside, then he could cash in when the cap is expected to jump the season after. I think if San Jose does, in fact, pull off the Carlson trade, which it's rumored they have a couple of different options there, they're going to need some sort of replacement option. And I think Dumba makes perfect sense here, especially when you consider without Carlson on the team, the Sharks would have an open spot on the power play, something that Dumba lost out on last season. He had previously been a power play kind of stalwart for them. Without that role, we saw the production drop. If he can get back to the power play unit, we'll see those numbers go up, and then he could cash in once the cap moves up.
All right, Vladimir Tarasenko, he split time with the Blues and Rangers last year, playing in 69 games, 18 goals, 32 assists, could still be a valuable asset to a team's top 6. So where do you see Tarasenko landing?
I think Ottawa is a good spot for Tarasenko. He could easily take the number 1 winger spot there and play with a guy like Tim Stützle, or slide to the second line and kind of be the feature player on that line himself. They've got a ton of cap space. They could offer both a short-term deal or a long-term commitment, depending on what Tarasenko is looking for here. Obviously, the shoulder issues would be a slight concern. Maybe Ottawa wouldn't want to go too long, but there's going to be other teams on the market that are going to have those same issues. So I think a team with a lot of cap and an opportunity to put him in a top 6 role, Ottawa makes a ton of sense.
All right, Zach Parise. This dude is 38 years old, which is not old for the earth, but is old for professional sports. But he still managed to play in all 82 games for the Islanders last year. He also scored 21 goals. If he doesn't retire, is he back with them, or could you see him somewhere else?
I do think staying in Long Island would be an option. But what about a return to Minnesota? The difficult part here is they're already on the hook to pay him $7 million this season, or at least carry a $7 million cap hit from the buyout that they had for him. So they would need to figure out how to sign Philip Gustafsson first and youngster Brandon Duheim. But I think Minnesota wouldn't be a terrible fit here. They could use a bottom 6 veteran, which is kind of more his role these days. He's shown some durability. But the question is, can egos get out of the way of the fact that they're already paying him, and now he essentially would be like doubling down. So there's some hills to climb on that one, but I think Minnesota would actually make a lot of sense.
All right, another seasoned vet still on the market, Paul Stastny. He only had 22 points last year for Carolina, but he did contribute 4 goals in the Canes' playoff run. So which team could use that veteran presence in their bottom 6?
Honestly, I think a third stint in Winnipeg for Paul Stastny could be on the horizon here. It'd be a nice depth addition to a relatively young Jets forward squad. I mentioned that they're a little bit thin, relying on a lot of youngsters right now. And even if that younger talent steps up, I don't think it'd be a huge problem to have Stastny as like your 13th forward here. It's a good landing spot for him. And I think this would be a completely different looking team if they got both both Taves and Stastny in to provide some veteran experience.
All right, AJ, thank you. Here is where AJ would match these remaining free agents. You can see it right here over on the board. Yes, look at that. Excellent work, AJ. We'll have somebody take a screenshot of this. We'll have to see where these dudes end up. Thank you so much, AJ. We appreciate it. That is a show. The Sweat will be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be solo hosting once again. I'll see you then.